Nothing more than greed led to the collapse, a dying environment, depleted resources, broken societies, widening inequality, all ending, as expected, in the Third World War. Four years of war passed without victory or defeat. The world's population fell from 9.5 billion to 3 billion. Humans, undeterred by their own ruin, rebuilt civilization faster than at any other point in history. Humanity thrived once more under the integrated AI, Neo 2200, unaware that the quiet ticking of their own demise had already begun. One day, from deep within the Milky Way, a small, hidden neutron star 25 light-years from Earth erupted, releasing gamma rays laced with lethal radiation. The leaders of all nations convened an emergency meeting, and ideologies and religions no longer held meaning, only the preservation of humanity remained. After extensive research, it was concluded that with the current state of human technology, the only realistic refuge was underground. At the same time, it became equally clear that saving all of humanity was impossible. Nations around the world mobilized all their resources to begin constructing underground cities for their citizens. Shelters designed to shield them from radiation and gamma ray exposure. We have 10 years left. Across the world, underground cities are quietly taking shape. But the questions remain. How long must we stay below, and is there truly space for all of us? Almost all countries have completed their preparations. Some nations conducted research for space migration, but it ultimately ended in failure. There were also countries that gave up due to a lack of national capability. The World Unification Organization agreed to disperse and accommodate people from these countries to preserve human diversity. However, in a reality where even their own citizens could not be fully accommodated, it was nothing more than a symbolic gesture. nations officially began the process of selecting individuals for underground relocation. For those outside the privileged and elite classes, relocation tickets were randomly assigned through the NEO 3030 system. Protests and acts of terror broke out across the world, but against the overwhelming cause of humanity's survival, all the noise eventually faded into insignificance. Meanwhile, some chose to sacrifice themselves for future generations, while others humbly gave up their tickets, believing it was their fate to accept divine judgment. The selected individuals began boarding the transport elevators to the underground cities, one by one. I was assigned to US 10, the 10th underground city in the United States. A few years ago, a system was introduced to identify each city by combining the country's initials with a unique number. For the last time, I lift my eyes to the real sky. The final stretch of blue I'll ever see in this life. The gamma rays arrived, just as foreseen, and their impact was far more devastating than anyone had feared. As the final broadcast from those left behind played, all we could do was watch in silence. One by one, the cameras went dark, and everything slowly came to an end. Who knows when we'll get to see the real sun and sky again, instead of that artificial one.
A 100 years have slipped by since the world was shattered by the great catastrophe. Eventually, even the last fragile connections to nearby cities were lost. It was the beginning of an age of isolation. For the past century, the scarce resources barely kept people alive. Maintaining contact with other cities was seen as an unnecessary burden. The other cities were probably no different. Whether they were still alive, or ever truly existed, was becoming harder to believe. Surface radiation levels still warned of danger. Driven by the constant shortage of space and resources, we keep expanding the city deeper underground. No one knows how far we've descended, we just keep burrowing downward like roots. The idea of returning to the surface has grown so distant. It now sounds like something out of a fantasy tale.
Back when we lived on the surface, we could see the blue sky just by looking up.
The artificial sun above still gave off a faint light, and we struggled to channel its diminishing energy into the lower levels. But perhaps we had descended too far. As the power continued to fade, life support systems started to fail one after another. On the only communication screen connected to the upper control room, there was no response except for the message: surface radiation threat, underground expansion recommended. A few leaders in the lower sectors urged an investigation into the silence above, but fear outweighed courage, and in the end, they turned away, pretending nothing had ever occurred. Due to resource depletion and increasing danger, underground expansion was no longer possible through human effort alone. The leaders had to gather in the lower control room to make a critical decision. HRP, the Human Reformation Project, was designed to preserve the existing workforce while drastically reducing resource usage and operational hazards. 3 conditions were given for the modification. First, only adults over the age of 20 are eligible. Second, the decision must be made voluntarily. Third, the human brain must not be modified, except for the insertion of the Neo 9000 AI chip for effective information sharing. Modified humans required neither oxygen nor food, just the newly developed mineral-based energy source. As long as the brain remained intact, their bodies could be repaired or replaced with ease. Religious leaders opposed the project on spiritual grounds, but their resistance faded in the face of critical resource shortages. Contrary to the leaders' fears, volunteers accounted for nearly half of the lower population. They did it for their families, for their children, for those they loved, and to survive. Soon after, the large-scale modification plant roared to life, and the volunteers' bodies were dismantled and rebuilt piece by piece. Contrary to concerns, their minds remained intact, their thoughts, emotions, and personalities unchanged. Only their bodies had changed. They were still family, friends, and lovers. Those who remained unmodified were called OH for original humans, while the reformed, altered ones were labeled RH. One day, a new energy vein suitable for RH was discovered, enough to sustain them for centuries.
At the end of the day, these minerals are just fuel for the machines. They're not meant for us.
The most dangerous sites were always handled by the RH. Their bodies were nearly immortal, but their human brains could not adapt to pain and fear. Instead, it only grew stronger. What hurt more than the prejudice from other OH generations was watching the people who remembered them, family, friends, lovers, disappear one by one. And with each loss, a piece of their humanity slipped away.